All right, welcome everyone to our first PocketSuite webinar roundtable. These discussions are going to be very informal following the previous week's webinar. We will be taking questions from attendees to discuss in more of an informal format. And we look forward to just answering all of your questions and giving you a little bit more of an in-depth overview of what other facilities are doing. So without further ado, my name is Abby. You saw me on the webinar last week. I am joined by my colleague Rocco, who was also with me last week. And we're going to chat and just answer some questions about intake forms. The first question I have here is, can you have a different intake form for different reservation types?
Not only can you, I probably would. Generally speaking, there are the best practice, I would say, and the things that I see the most often is to have sort of a list of questions that go to everybody. And we can set those up so that they apply to all items and all services. That's your basis, right? And
Mhm.
then after that, you come up with, okay, here are the questions for this service, and here are the questions for that service. Usually service type, so maybe you do it by category. And then in in the app, you can basically just take that specific form and you can say, okay, we're going to put it on to these items in this category, or we're going to put it onto these items in this category, so that only if your client signs up for those items and therefore they need to see that specific set of questions, will they see it in that case. So I suggest doing it just because that just means there's a lot less for them to have to fill out depending on the service that they sign up for, right?
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Um, Next question here is, what's the difference between a lead form and an intake form?
Yeah, so I almost jumped into that on the
Yeah,
last
good segue.
question. So it is a good segue. Um, a moment ago, I made mention of the types of questions that get asked for all clients, regardless of what service they sign up for. Those are actually called client fields in PocketSuite settings, and they can be directly put onto they are directly put onto that lead form that you just mentioned. So those are I'm going to say, they're always a narrower set of questions, right? For
Yeah.
any lead, regardless of what they're signing up for. The intake forms, sometimes we just call them forms in PocketSuite without the word lead in front of it. Those are where you can set up those sort of siloed sets of questions for the different services. And the major difference between the two is the lead form, again, narrower, going to be a little more broad, and it's just a link that people will find probably on your website, whereas the forms are often sent like by text or through the app or whatever, and they can just be filled out by anybody, whether they're an active client or a lead, or yeah, anybody who's in the system can fill one of those out.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So when I think about this from my lens as a dog trainer, I think of, I guess, the difference as the lead form is that person who's Googling dog trainer near me at 2 o'clock in the morning because their dog peed on the floor for the 15th time. And
Yep.
it's a cry for help, right? A cry for please contact me. And so that's how I think of a lead form versus an intake form being more along the lines of, okay, you've signed up for a board and train with me. This is the information I need to successfully complete the dog's board and train. And that might be things
Exactly.
like give me your feeding and medication instructions since the dog will be living with me, any more information that I may have not gotten during the evaluation. So that's helpful. I think for a typical facility, that could also look like maybe a different intake form for their trial run of daycare, right? Their evaluation day of daycare. They might get a specific form for that because they never met the dog before. And then they might get a different form for boarding. And again, boarding could be something like fill out feeding, fill out medication, etc. So that makes a lot of sense. Um,
And
are
I-
there,
I'll note that while we're talking about the difference between those two things, the webinar last week was a lot about, what are the opportunities that you could set up questions to, kind of signal to the client that, well, one, that you're paying attention, that you're going to really care for this animal, but also, hey, these might be an opportunity for another service, right? An upsell, basically. And I think those questions, whatever those flagged questions are, probably should be on, they actually should be on the lead form. They should be for everybody. So it doesn't matter what they sign up for, you're going to get those flagged questions about aggression or whatever it may be. So that way you're not like accidentally not asking a bunch of a certain subset of people about these things that you theoretically want to be asking everybody about.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think taking that a step further when we talk about communication and automation, because these forms are a great way to automate customer communication, that initial intake form with that information regarding aggression or whatever is helpful because you can then set up icons in the app, which is one of my favorite features. And this is something across, I think, a lot of different pet softwares. They do something similar where you can actually flag the account. And in PocketSuite, we can actually trigger this automatically based off of certain client fields. So, for example, if they have the medication field filled out, meaning they filled out that their dog needs some kind of medication, we can automatically add an icon to that pet's account that flags, hey, just as you're looking through your app, right? As you're looking through your calendar, you can actually see visually this dog needs medication. Then, of course, you can look at the run card, look at the profile for more details. But the point being that the intake form, while yes, they build customer loyalty and build that trust, they streamline your operations, help you identify areas for upsell, but they can also set off other automation within the platform. You could even use it if they fill out about aggression, right? This might be a manual icon that you go, oh, they filled this out and it says that the dog is aggressive towards larger dogs or smaller dogs. And you can place that icon on the dog's profile just so that you can actually kind of segment your customers. And then taking it a step further, you can actually use those icons to segment your customers into different marketing campaigns. So the lead form is kind of like the genesis of the customer journey, I guess, if that makes sense. Um, Attendees, please feel free to drop any questions in the chat. We're just discussing again intake forms, which was the webinar we did last week. This is a very informal roundtable where you can kind of talk about best practices, ask questions of Rocco and I. So certainly feel free to drop any questions or best practices in the chat. I'm looking, I wonder if there's a way I can make it so you can speak. And then that way you don't have to put it in the chat. Dog trainer takes on Zoom. Let's see. Here we go. I've just permitted you all to talk if you want. You may stay on mute. You may stay off camera. That is certainly welcome, but we have a smaller group today with the holiday coming up. And so I figured it'd be fun to bring everyone, yeah, into the fold. So again, my name's Abby. I'm joined by Rocco with the team here at PocketSuite. I am an account executive, so I help customers learn more about PocketSuite, and then Rocco takes them by the hand and onboards them. So he's onboarded hundreds of pet businesses. And so we were just talking about best practices around forms and specifically intake forms. So, um, do you all have any questions? All right.
The way that the the way that Zoom like categorizes with it says talking permitted is that's just really funny. Talking permitted. You can unmute yourself.
Kathy and Lola, you are permitted to speak. That is really funny. Zoom is funny. Um, so yeah, so again, we're just chatting. We answered some questions earlier about um, the difference between a lead form versus an intake form. So we hit on that a little bit. And then we touched on the fact that you can use different intake forms based off of different services. I think one thing that we haven't really touched on based off of last week's conversation is add-ons. So using and leveraging intake forms to upsell in a way that it adds value and is meaningful to the customer. I think that's the biggest thing that most of us in this space are cognizant of. We don't want to necessarily nickel and dime customers where it doesn't make sense. We want to provide the best service possible. But if we ask good qualifying questions in the intake form, then our highly trained staff can always follow up to offer valuable services. So, if I had a Bernedoodle come in and I see that it's a Bernedoodle, and it's coming in for boarding. A valuable upsell to that person might be a full groom on the day of checkout. Hey, do you want me to just take care of grooming your dog before you come pick him up? He'll be fresh, clean, haircut, bathed, making sure that, again, we're adding value. Another example, I have crazy Boykin Spaniels. They are energetic, psychotic dogs. So if I fill out, again, I have Boykin Spaniels, maybe you ask me about their temperaments, and I say, extremely energetic, high drive working, excessive markers because I have stud dogs. You're going through and you're going, okay, this reads to me. You see that they're intact. And you see this reads to me like a dog that needs one-on-one playtime, enrichment. So you're kind of, again, thinking of things that would add value to me. And as a consumer, absolutely. Please play one-on-one fetch with my dogs. Please work my dogs because it's going to make their brains so happy. Please do puzzles with them. Again, one-on-one things. I understand they can't go in a play group because they're intact. It's totally fair. And again, those intake forms are just giving you that opportunity to curate the customer's experience. So that was kind of the last thing to touch on was add-on services. Would love to hear from the group maybe what add-on services you all are offering at your facilities. And if you don't want to talk, you can drop them in the chat.
Talking is permitted.
Is permitted by Zoom. Um, I'll add, I've been in this industry for almost 10 years as a dog trainer, but I just boarded my dog for the very first time in a kennel ever. And I'm trying to
Whoa.
think of the services I added because I
I
added
always
my
do
bill.
like I always add to it. Like, and I'm not even that type of person who like, yeah, it's just like if I'm doing this once a year or twice a year, and I don't know, it's like they kind of deserve it. You know what I
That's how
mean?
I look at it. I'm like, they get a lot
Like
of work.
I'm aware that it's usually more money than it needs to be. It's like, yeah, I could give them the toy or whatever, but it's
Yeah.
like people just they're going on vacation. They wanna add the thing. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I think it's, yeah, again, please fetch my dog, work with my dog. I will send him with his, bumpers and his training tools. Like, please work my dogs because then I will actually have less guilt going away too. I know, my sister who lives up in Maine has a French bulldog named Mosby, and he goes to a facility that they do art class and she's a designer. So it's actually the most perfect match made in heaven. And she has no human children. So Mosby's her child and he does finger painting in class.
That's that actually might be a little beyond what I would sign up for now that I think about it. There is a line.
It's a line. Well, it is hysterical. He makes little paw print art. It's very seasonal, very cute. This is a more boutique business, I will say, so they cater to a certain clientele. Uh,
Yeah,
like his play
yeah,
groups are 5 dogs or less because he's a French bulldog, everyone. Need we say more? I love a Frenchie. I love them so much. But he needs to be in a play group with 5 dogs or less. Um, and yeah, it's a really cool program that they've built where they have all these add-ons. So enrichment daycare is also something that I'm starting to see a lot more of, which as a dog trainer, that's really interesting to me because I think the daycare dog demographic does not represent dogs as a whole, right? There's actually a really small portion of dogs that do well in just your typical huge unstructured play group. Most dogs are going to have a limit to that, but they might still need some stimulation. My dogs are actually a perfect example. They would not love a huge amount of group play because they're actually really big weenies and they're afraid of other dogs. A full-grown Canada Goose, forget it. They'll bring that in no time. But another dog, they're gonna get overstimulated. So these enrichment style daycares are really interesting to me. And I met with one recently that showed us some internal software. So this is for their employees that had essentially all the different enrichment, I guess, options, and the employees got to pick and choose what they could do, like meaning what class they were going to run. And so some of the employees would do the little scent work class where they hide the bone under the cups for the dogs, and then some would take on, a different fetch session. And it was really interesting and it was kind of cool because the employees were able to pick which add-on services they enjoyed doing. And it got my brain going with an app like PocketSuite where we do have task assignment. And so thinking of ways that we can leverage automated and manual tasks in PocketSuite and assigning those to employees. I think enrichment is such a not only is it fun for the dogs, but it can actually be enriching for the employees as well. So that's always a really interesting add-on to think about is how do you make this more fun for the dogs, increase that price per pet, and make it more fun for your employees as well. I think that's something that's really piqued my interest.
To
Rocco, have you seen a lot of that in the onboarding side? Are you seeing more like enrichment style?
yeah, I mean I will say that I'm going to say maybe even in the last like 2 years that has become more common of just like seeing that type of thing offered. And to be honest with you, I don't even know necessarily like what everyone's capacity for that type of thing is, but everybody is, or I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of folks are trying to figure out how to make that work. And I think that that's kind of the takeaway is just like everybody has a different capacity for doing these types of enrichment building add-on type things, but you could almost always figure out a way to make some version of it work, right?
Absolutely.
Um, is how I is what I've seen, I will
Yeah.
say. And the other note that I wanted to make is that like I think a lot of this stuff may not sell really well or may not present really well to a new client who doesn't know you yet and doesn't like understand, oh, they're going to take really good care. And, but like the second time they come, that cart's going to be full of this stuff, right? Um, and sometimes, allowing them to elect into that themselves is great. But to tie this back to the form discussion, there are plenty of people who won't elect into it themselves, right? And that's where we're kind of placing these questions. It's not just placing the questions, it's placing the questions and training the staff or whoever is doing the intake of the dog to say like this is what this means, right? Like and that's where these repeat customers who come in for the second, third time and they start to know you will start saying yes to these things when you go like, hey, got to be honest with you. Dog's a little touchy around certain areas. They could really use this enrichment session. We would do it for X amount of dollars, right? The
Yeah.
answer is probably going to be yes, the second or third time they show up. And it's just like the thing is we don't know that information until we've sometimes we do know that information, but we want to put that in front of them. We want to make them know that we asked, right? And that they had to sort of, in some way, opt into giving that information out. And I think that actually goes a long way. So it's a little bit of psychology there, maybe, and some of it might be just, armchair psychology, but I think there's some legitimacy to it.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've seen some facilities pay sales commission, like a formal sales commission on add-on services. I've seen some more informal where it's like if you hit X number of add-ons a week, you get X number of dollars, or I buy you lunch, or you get a $25 Starbucks gift card. It doesn't have to be super, super structured. It could be something that's a little bit easier to track. Like, again, if you sell 10 add-ons in one work week, you get a $25 Starbucks gift card. It doesn't have to be crazy, but it's just something to incentivize employees to see the value for the clients. And then, once they sell them on it the first time, it's kind of like the customer's going to sign up every time because they see the value and they really like it. And so, again,
Exactly.
it's easy money for your employees. So that's some food for thought. Um, as well, I think it's interesting to see who's, the sales training behind it for sure. And I think the front desk staff is big on that. The other thing to think about too, and I have a friend who does this, leveraging your tech to communicate these things. So I brought up Mosby. I'll pick on him again. For certain holidays and things, they'll do the special art classes. So it's not every day, right? So maybe it's for Easter, they do flower paw prints. So you can leverage in PocketSuite, it would be smart campaigns. It's a text message campaign that would go out to every single dog that is checked in on that day. Hey, if your dog is checked in over Easter Sunday, $10, he'll get a paw print artwork piece of art. You can always leverage it. Or, hey, if your dog's checked in on Sunday, we'll do Sunday brunch for $5. And all the Sunday brunch could be is frozen yogurt and but like bananas or something or blueberries. So it doesn't have to be crazy. But again, leveraging your staff, your intake forms, your methods of communication. We talked about icons briefly, how these forms, when the client fills it out, can trigger an icon in PocketSuite that's viewed by the business only. That can indicate different things about the dog. And you can, again, turn those icons into marketing campaigns. So all of my energetic dogs get a special campaign about X, Y, and Z add-on service that applies to energetic dogs, or my aggressive dogs get one-on-ones. So there's just a lot of room, again, with the genesis being the intake form, but there's so many different avenues that you can then take that information and continue to build value and build that loyalty with the customer. So I think that's ultimately why we wanted to start here with the webinar series and with the roundtable is just this seems like such a niche thing to focus on. Why are we beating the drum so hard on these intake forms? But it really is kind of often that first interaction the customer has with you. And so it's your opportunity to build loyalty, of course, save time so that you're not asking these questions on the phone, right? And paying someone to be on the phone answering these questions. But you're building that loyalty, building that trust, getting the information you need up front from an admin perspective, vaccines, veterinarian, all of that. And then it allows you to, again, segment that customer. Customer segmentation is a buzzword that I'm hearing a lot in the industry. And what that means is just tracking different customer behavior and marketing to them accordingly. So again, as they're filling out these forms, PocketSuite can automatically kind of start dumping them into icon buckets, right? And then you can send out marketing campaigns. Your employees could see that icon, and that tells them through their training, oh, I see this icon. Let's offer this add-on service, or let's recommend this grooming package. So it is the very tip of the customer relationship iceberg that can turn, you know, one client into thousands of dollars in repeat revenue because of their loyalty. Other thoughts or questions? Let me check the chat. You're a quiet bunch. You are permitted to speak. I know it's a holiday week. We'll let you all get back. You're probably up to your ears in dogs, I can only imagine. So we will let you get back to your busy, busy businesses. Fingers crossed for busy but uneventful weekends for everyone. Lots of dogs, lots of dollars, no chaos. Rocco, any other thoughts that you'd like to add, at least from the onboarding perspective?
Don't panic. No,
Yes, don't panic. It's a lot. We gave a lot of information last week and we gave a lot today. So don't panic is a good one.
that's what I want to leave it with. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Don't panic and you're permitted to speak. Zoom, what a wild time. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a happy, happy holiday weekend. Thank you, Lola. It was great to see you. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.